And when she kept talking, I kept thinking, she's talking about me the entire time. And I'm going to get a bit personal, because at times I'm referred back to Terry, the student, versus Terry, the middle-aged guy, your colleague standing in front of you today. So keep those two things in mind. For us to move forward, some of you did not attend the 15-minute session, so here are my goals. I just want to briefly define the concept of what validation theory is for people who didn't come, but I made a bunch of promises to people who showed up at my table that if they gave me a chance, I would expound upon the 15 minutes and give them some more meat in terms of how they would make validation something real in their classroom. So, a background, real quickly. And I will link, Darlene, I will link this presentation, and maybe there's some way I can link it maybe on the mobile pages or something like that where any faculty member can gain access to this, because this is Google Slides, so and it's public. So all of you will have access to all of this at the end of the presentation.
It's Terry, sorry, for our viewers who are coming on through Periscope, is there a search that they can do with Google Slides? Maybe the name of your title?
The title of the presentation is Validation Theory, Fall 2016 WS Convocation.
Okay, so you can do a search there.
Sorry.
One more time.
Validation Theory, Fall 2016 WS Convocation.
Okay. And if you want to contact darlene.smith@ws.edu, we can get that information to you as well.
So there's a link in the slideshow to a TBR initiative looking at a research that revealed this relationship. That is, if you can get students early on, you keep hearing me emphasize this term early over and over and over again. Early on, if you get students to identify their program of study, we know through some of the research, there's correlations showing that those students are more likely to complete their program if we get them to identify earlier on. That research, that initiative led to a goal which is going to tie into validation theory. That goal is we need to, as academic institutions, try to get students to identify their major sooner rather than later. That goal ties nicely to the importance of what we are moving towards here at Walter State, and that is, Dr. Jarnigan and Kirsten Elliott did a great job, and Roxanne Bowen of presenting overgrowth mindset. And validation theory, in my opinion, is the mechanism that gets us to that outcome. When I think of growth mindset, think of changing people's minds from fixed intelligence, fixed ability, fixed learning, to growth in those areas. Validation theory is the mechanism by which we get them there. Yes, and I'm going to show you some ways we can do that today. Before we do, yesterday I had a great time at Dr. Jarnigan's presentation, and one thing popped in my mind as I'm watching your presentation. We keep talking as faculty about how we want our students to adopt growth mindset, yes? But as a teacher myself, one of my core philosophies is always this: I'm never willing to ask you as a student to do anything I myself wouldn't do. Oh boy, that means we as faculty also need to embrace the idea of growth mindset, even maybe in our teaching practices. So I'm going to tell you of several things I do. Doesn't mean you have to do them. Maybe try some of them and you say, didn't work, Terry. Totally, I would never do this again, that's fine. But if you fail at it or it doesn't work for your particular discipline, you would have learned something from the process and you would have adopted growth mindset in trying to do so. So I'm going to ask you not only think of me in two selves today, I'm going to ask you to adopt this growth mindset yourself as a faculty member, not just demand it for your students, but model it for your students. Philosophy shift. For validation theory to work, here's what we have to do. We have to shift away from the way probably most of us were taught. I told the group at my little table the other day, I remember walking into a comp class years ago, and a professor saying these words to me: welcome to fall 1990 something. I'm Dr. So-and-so. I get paid whether you're here or not. After you're probably going to fail my class. I remember sitting in a chair thinking, I am in trouble. Like, this is not going to go well for me, and I would never have approached that faculty member. He scared me to death. I wanted to do well in his class, but I wanted no part of the engagement with him because he literally frightened me. He created a reactive dynamic in our relationship where he was not proactive at all in terms of ensuring I was engaged or bringing me into the process. In fact, he pushed me away. That's what he did. Now, that's a bad example, but I also want to give you a great example of a professor that was proactive. We know that from the research, first-generation students like me, low-income students like me, are reluctant initially, even if you don't act like that English professor, to approach us in the classroom. They are. They're just reluctant. We can overcome that using validation theory. Now, here's the story part I promised you guys. Remember that Terry I told you that was a student? What if I told everyone here that same Terry walked the halls of this campus in the mid-1990s? That same Terry was nearly a Walter State student, even though I'm from Texas. I was born and raised in East Texas, rural East Texas, much like rural East Tennessee. And when I went to the service, I was stationed in Norfolk, Virginia. One of my best friends was from East Tennessee. He brought me home on leave. I ended up dating a girl that lived here who, guess what, was a freshman at Walter State, fall of 1994. I may or may not have snuck into our orientation session here at Walter State in the fall of 1994 just to be with her. But through the orientation process, I'm like, wow, this is a great school. I think when I'm discharged, I want to go to school here. But this is where the story takes kind of a downward turn. Because I'm first generation, because I come from these at-risk populations, guess what? I was also reluctant to come over to financial aid and talk to staff here. So I picked up the printed timetable. I looked at the out-of-state tuition, and I put it down, and my dreams were over. Because those dollar figures did not mesh with what the GI Bill paid. And I thought, there's no way I could go to school at Walter State. But I was wrong. In talking with Janice Donahue over the years since I've come here, it's my understanding that even now, if you discharge honorably from the services into any state, you could be counted as in-state tuition. So if I'd just taken the effort and overcome my fear, my reluctance, I might have been a student here at Walter State. So it's kind of a funny crossing of paths that I eventually got here. So back from a fun story and all that, let's talk about validation theory specifically. This is Laura Brennan on the left. She's a professor at the University of Texas, San Antonio. In the early 1990s, she introduced this concept of validation theory. Her qualitative research initially was to answer a couple of questions. Hey, what about community college life? What about it promotes student successful outcomes? And her initial research questions were wrong. It's the beginning of science, right? She thought it was students taking part in on-campus events. She was wrong. And sometimes being wrong in research is right because it leads to an entirely different area. What she found, however, it wasn't that. That predictor wasn't the best. The best predictor was that someone reached out to those students and formed a connection, whether it be a staff member or a faculty member or an administrator. A meaningful relationship between the student and that person, and that resulting validation was the best predictor of that student's success. Brennan went on to define what validation theory is, and I'm going to repeat it because I know you can read it, but I want to emphasize it. Validation is intentional, effortful, you doing it on purpose. It is proactive, not reactive. It's seeing a problem emerge before it emerges and going to that student. It is affirmation, positive affirmation. That is encouragement and support, typically conveying some type of emotion. If you do these things as you build relationships between yourself and students, it leads to that student feeling validated as a person, not a W number, as a person that can relate to you in a career field or choice, and it predicts their eventual success. It validates them as content creators, and we already do this. I mean, I'm looking in the crowd, I'm looking, at our off-campus locations, and you guys already do such a great job with mobile application, and we have mobile fellows in the audience. You guys are doing a lot of this. You're allowing students to be content creators. And Rendon said that is absolutely impactful in terms of validating students. Also, that through your relationship with them, you're encouraging them to have a sense of personal development, ongoing personal development. And that means that you often fail. And one big part of Rendon's research is, and this is initially what I get back feedback from faculty, is coddling. Aren't you, Terry, aren't you just saying we should coddle students? I'm going to prove to you in a minute that I'm not, I promise. Her idea, her framework is more about authentic, sincere feedback and relationship building so that you validate that student's identity and career goals kind of moving forward. I want to take a break away from me for a second, and I want to introduce you to somebody. So at my little table, I told a story about a professor I had named Debbie Moreland at the time. Her name was Debbie Moreland. Her name now is Debbie Nichols. She's been remarried. She was my intro to philosophy teacher at Mountain View Community College in Dallas. I did eventually make it to community college after I left Walter State and went back home to Texas. And this woman she validated me. Let me give you some examples. So in her philosophy class, week one, she called me by my name in class. Terry, what are your thoughts about John Locke and empiricism? How do you weigh this school of philosophy? Get this. She would cite my background in her questions. So you were in the Navy, and as a veteran, how do you feel about? She integrated her curriculum and asked questions about me. And I remember I walked into her class one day. I told the little 15-minute committee, my cheeks were all puffed up because I just had my wisdom teeth extracted. I was half looped on Novocaine. I walk in her classroom and she's like, "Welcome to class. I'm looking forward to the test today." And I'm like, "What?" First generation college student, still learning the process. I'm like, "We have a test today?" She said, "Yeah." And I said, my cheeks are swollen. I'm on Novocaine. She goes, "Well, here's the thing." She was very sincere. She goes, "Are you in a lot of pain? Do you feel like you're not here with the medication?" I said, "Yeah." She said, and I'm not advocating you do this, but she said, "Hey, maybe you take the test tomorrow." And I said, "No, I'm taking it now. I'm taking it right now, just like the rest of my colleagues, our students." So I take the test. I end up acing it somehow, some way. The next day she comes in, or 2 days later, she comes into class, more validation. Listen, guys. She says, she's really kind of getting on in the class about their performance. She's like, "Look, I'm really disappointed that some of you didn't perform." She goes, "Terry comes in, half-baked on Novocaine, cheeks swelling out, and he makes an A." And from that moment, and even from the time she called me by name, I felt this connection with her. Like, she actually cared about who I was as a person and my goals. And man, when her office doors were open, I was there. When she had office hours, I was talking to her. When I saw her in the hall, I was navigating towards her. And she always called me by name. She always addressed me. So after our talk Tuesday, I'm thinking about her intently because I'm recalling all these memories are flooding back to me. I go in to see my dean for my little talk. I come out of my dean's office. I go down to the break room. I'm like, "You know what? I want to talk to Debbie now." I pull up Mountain View's website. I call the department secretary Tuesday night. I say, "Hey, this is who I am. I was once in her class. Could you please give her my cell phone number?" Sure enough, yesterday, my phone rings, and it's Debbie Nichols. And she said, "What's going on, Terry? How can I help?"